Picture a honeybee colony, just humming with life, this incredible, bustling city. But what if I told you that inside that seemingly perfect world, a silent, invisible invasion could be taking place? One that could turn this whole thriving community into a ghost town, almost overnight. Today, we're going to investigate the microscopic criminals that are threatening our most important pollinators. So what is this hidden threat? What's the thing that turns a healthy, buzzing hive into a scene of just devastation? That's the big mystery we're going to unravel. We're going to follow the clues to find out who the culprits are and exactly how they operate. And the evidence? Man, it's heartbreaking. You might see bees with these crumpled, totally useless wings, unable to fly. Or maybe you'll see others just crawling around near the hive entrance, their bodies looking discolored or like they're losing hair. And sometimes, the worst part is, the entire colony just collapses. The signs are right there in front of you, but the assassins, they're microscopic. All right, so to really understand what's going on, our investigation has to start by identifying these invisible enemies. Let's take a closer look at this hive under threat. So it turns out the culprits are a whole group of different viruses, and their attack is incredibly thorough. They don't just target one part of the colony, they go after every single stage of a bee's life, from the tiny, helpless larvae all the way to the adult bees. And the results are just devastating. Physical damage and, in way too many cases, death. Now, even though there are lots of viruses out there, our investigation pretty quickly starts to zero in on one main suspect, a notorious super spreader that's basically the perfect getaway vehicle for these microscopic killers. Meet Varroa destructor. Yeah, the name kind of says it all, doesn't it? This parasitic mite is public enemy number one for honeybees. It's linked to the loss of millions of colonies all over the world. See, it's not just some pest, it's basically a living hypodermic needle. It feeds on the bee's essential fluids and its fat bodies, which are kind of like a bee's liver, weakening its host and, this is the crucial part, injecting a cocktail of deadly viruses right into its system. So how does it pull this off? Well, its method is just brutally effective. First, it latches onto a bee, often a nurse bee or even a pupa that's still developing inside its cell. Then it literally pierces the bee's protective outer shell to start feeding. This creates an open wound, which becomes the perfect entry point for all those viruses to just mainline their way right into the bee's body. So now the virus is inside the hive, and this is where things get really tragic. The bee's own social nature, the thing that makes them so amazing, actually starts to work against them. This is how the infection really starts spreading from within. Yeah, these are the inside jobs. The very behaviors that make a colony so efficient also turn it into a total hotbed for disease. See, bees are constantly sharing food mouth to mouth. It's called trophallaxis, and that's a perfect way to pass a virus along. The nurse bees, while they're feeding the young, can unknowingly transmit diseases to the next generation. And honestly, in the packed, tight quarters of a hive, simple physical contact is more than enough to keep the infection going. So you've really got two main ways this infection spreads. We just talked about horizontal transmission. That's the immediate B2B spread. It's like a fire sweeping through the current population. But vertical transmission? Well, that's maybe even more sinister. If an infected drone mates with a queen, he can pass the virus to her, and then she becomes a permanent source, a reservoir, passing the infection down to all her offspring through her eggs. It's like hardwiring the disease right into the colony's bloodline. But the threat doesn't just stop at the hive entrance. Oh no, our investigation now has to look outward, to some really surprising accomplices that help these viruses travel from one colony to another. Think of these as the bridges between different bee cities. Drones, for instance, aren't exactly the best navigators, and sometimes they just wander into the wrong hive, carrying all their viral baggage right along with them. Researchers have also found that other insects, like wasps and even ants, can carry bee viruses, acting as these little reservoirs out in the environment. But you know, one of the biggest accomplices might just be the most surprising one. The beekeeper. Think about it. A beekeeper's whole job is to help their colonies thrive. So they might do something that seems totally helpful, like moving a frame of honey from a really strong hive over to a weaker one to give it a little boost. But if that frame is carrying unseen mites or virus particles, that simple, well-intentioned act can accidentally introduce a plague into a perfectly healthy colony. It can have absolutely devastating consequences. It's just a stark reminder of how fragile this whole ecosystem really is. So, knowing all the ways these viruses attack and spread, what can be done? The final part of our investigation has to focus on the frontline defense strategy. Okay, this is probably the most critical thing to understand here. There are no antiviral medicines for bees. You can't just give them a pill to make it all go away. Once a virus really takes hold, the entire strategy has to shift. It becomes all about management, prevention, and controlling the things that spread it in the first place. So, this is the playbook. First and foremost, you have to control the varroa mite rigorously. Since it's the main superspreader, keeping those mite levels low is the single most important thing you can do. If a colony is just chronically sick, replacing the queen can remove a potential virus reservoir from the equation. And beyond that, it really just comes down to good management, keeping colonies strong and well-fed so their own immune systems can fight back, and practicing really strict hygiene, like never, ever moving frames from a questionable hive over to a healthy one. Ultimately, this battle against bee viruses is a constant one. It requires relentless vigilance. I mean, the bees are up against a microscopic invader that turns their greatest strengths, their social nature, into their biggest vulnerabilities. So the question isn't just whether we can protect them, but whether we can protect the huge ecosystem and, frankly, the food on our own tables that depends entirely on their survival.